Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody doing? How are you today, Lacey?
I'm excellent. It's a snowy day here in New York. How is it on the West Coast?
Oh, it's not snowing now, but there's a layer of, I guess in Oregon, it's mostly ice. So,
So you've got a sheet of ice and I've got some pretty little snow out the window.
Right. So not ultra safe to go out right now in Oregon.
So let's hang out here and let's gossip about some money.
And stuff. Well, let's start with the news and politics. So on our show today, we're going to cover the Iowa caucuses, which Trump won pretty handily. But it might not be quite as good news for him as you'd like to think, but it still went really well for him. Vivek Ramaswamy he's left the race. We won't have to see him again anymore this cycle. So he's gone. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the Trump disqualification cases in the Supreme Court. And then our favorite Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, looks like he's about to get ousted as well, or he's in trouble of getting ousted.
Oh, man, they just cannot get themselves together over there. I mean, I don't even like the party, but I want them to get their shit together enough to
pass some laws.
Keep somebody in or do something.
Well, and then speaking of people who can't get their shit together, Lauren Boebert is running. She's switched districts, so she's carpetbagging districts. And already, apparently, the people in the district she's running for now already hate her. And it looks like she's not even going to make it through the primary. So she's in trouble. But we'll also talk to you about changes to the tax code that's coming up and why this election is going to be really important for your pocketbook coming up going forward. And we'll talk a little bit about what the economy is doing. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about some different strategies for what do you do when you start making a little bit more money, and how that can be a negative if you don't plan it right. So that'll be our show for today.
That's true.
But we're going to begin in Iowa, where Trump he took it away, man. But we're going to clip to Morning Joe. Not always my favorite, but they do cover some of this stuff pretty well. So we're going to watch them talk about this a little bit, and we'll jump in.
Tim, let's start with you. I'd love for you to give us your input on what happened in Iowa last night, and what's your takeaway as it pertains to a potential Trump-Biden matchup in the fall.
Well, look, I think a couple of things are really interesting. First, like this enthusiasm number for the Republicans, 14% total turnout of Republican voters in Iowa. I think it's a really startling number. I think if I was the team Trump, I would be worried about this. He's supposed to be this guy that motivated everyone. The second is like DeSantis's performance was ridiculous. I was talking to a Republican.
He's right. So this is what it ended up being. Trump got 51% of the vote. DeSantis got 21.2. Nikki Haley came in third at 19.1. So Trump is, pretty much we could say now he's probably going to be the Republican candidate. Unlikely that either of these two are going to take him in the primary. I guess there's a slight chance Nikki Haley could take New Hampshire, because New Hampshire tends to be a little bit more moderate Republican, more college educated. So she has a little bit of a better shot there than she did in Iowa. Plus, it's hard to get excited about Iowa because, Mitt Romney won Iowa. I think he lost it and then he won it later on. Iowa doesn't necessarily tell you a whole lot. It still could go a lot of different ways, but it looks like Trump's pretty much clinched it. He's going to be the guy that runs in the actual election. But here was the thing he noted out. It was a 14% turnout for the Iowa caucus, which was 40% smaller than it was in 2020. So even though Trump got 51%, which is high, I think he only got 40-something% last time. 51%, that's really, really good numbers for him, except for the fact that like half the people didn't really show up. And even then, him only getting 51%, you would think he would have more enthusiasm. So what it seems like is a lot of people just decided they didn't want to show up. And what does that say?
Okay.
Especially in Iowa, which is really red.
Well, my question, though, is, are they just people who were like, oh yeah, Trump is going to win it anyway, and didn't bother to show up, and there are people who are just going to be faithfully, voting their party anyway,
Yeah, I could see that maybe, but when you're talking about, also, I mean, it was really bad weather, so that could have factored in, but a 40% drop is a pretty significant drop in numbers. I mean, and it's not like these were outdoors or anything. And plus, it's Iowa; it gets cold there all the time. They were showing pictures of people walking around in shorts and t-shirts, and it's like below zero. I mean, you're from the north,
Yeah.
You guys are used to you guys.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm freezing to death.
Walking through snow drifts.
Yeah, it's like 50 degrees out. I'm freezing to death, and Lacey's like, "It's beach weather. What's going on, man?"
Right, point us to the beach, man.
So, no, I think that might have been part of it, but I also think there's just a lack of enthusiasm about the Republican candidates, just in general. Plus, you have a third of Republicans flat out saying that if Trump gets convicted, they won't vote for him. So, even if half that number turns out to be true, he doesn't have nearly enough. So it might be that he's in real trouble here, and he's got to create more enthusiasm if he wants to get anything done, which is going to be tough while he's being shuttled back and forth to court. I mean, that's been working well with his base so far, apparently, but once he starts getting into the dog days where he's got to get the moderates and he's got to get some independents, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. We'll watch a little bit more of this, but yeah, kind of an interesting turnout. I would have thought he'd have taken it by like 70%. Honestly, I was shocked at this 51% number.
An operative who reminded me that DeSantis went to all 99 counties, and every time he did, he ended up sliding in those counties. He did worse in the counties as they saw him more. The more they were exposed to him, the worse he did. You and I have talked about this in the past. This is a guy who just isn't ready for prime time. And now, what's the rationale for his candidacy?
Right. He's going to go in a little bit more making fun of this, but I want to point this out. So Ron DeSantis he went to all 99 counties in Iowa. Iowa's ultra red state. I mean, they're gonna go for the Republican no matter what. But he went to all 99 counties, and as he went to all 99 counties, his numbers went down in each county because he's just so impersonable. In fact, in one of the counties, I think it was a prank. The guy came up and he gave Ron DeSantis a participation trophy. And they hadn't even started the caucus yet.
It's bad when you going to talk to people makes it worse. Like, it'd be like if you went to a job interview and they were like, we were more interested in hiring you before you came to this interview. Right. And now that you came to this interview, we're definitely not interested.
Right.
Like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, he has almost no personality. I mean, he's just a weird. I mean, they're all weird guys. Trump's a weird guy, but yeah.
Okay, let's be honest, though. I mean, in theory, we don't really want to be voting based on personality.
No, but you also want somebody who can lead, and you have to have some sort of personable skills if you're going to be the leader, right?
Yes, however, we've had some leaders whose personable skills were, let's just say, questionable at best.
Yeah, no kidding. But
we've had some leaders that are like, well, that one's just going to walk us straight into a war, and everyone hates them.
Oh, yeah.
Come on now.
Well, this guy's going to dig in a little bit more because it was bad for DeSantis. This was a horrible turnout for him because he doesn't have a shot in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley has a shot. He doesn't. So this is pretty much this is the nail in the coffin for DeSantis.
Like, what do people now believe? He was supposed to be the Trump alternative. And the truth is, the more people see that alternative, the less they want him. On to the general election.
And Jim, yeah. Can I really quickly, before you get to the general election, can I say now, and again, Donald Trump could not have paid for a better result last night. If you look at Haley, but you are right. A low turnout, not a lot of enthusiasm for Republicans. A third of Republicans saying they loathe Donald Trump in the polls. He doesn't get half of the Republican vote. This is no huge vote of confidence for Donald Trump, but the way DeSantis and Haley chopped each other's support in half, very good for Donald Trump. Now Nikki Haley goes to New Hampshire, probably overperforms there. You've got Ron DeSantis. He's going down to South Carolina. And what is Ron DeSantis going to be doing in South Carolina? He's going to camp out there for a month, and he's going to go and campaign on vets and military issues, which, of course, will gut any support that Nikki Haley may have had with those groups. So we're going to probably see a repeat in South Carolina of these two cutting each other in half and Donald Trump just gliding through.
Yep. And that's the thing that amazes me about all these campaigns is the only Republican that went after Trump was Chris Christie. And he's a scumbag, but you live in New York when he shut down the bridge in New Jersey just to, his payback against the city, right? But no, anyway.
Seriously.
Yeah, no, he's a nutball. Anyway, but that's the thing is, I've never seen this before. We have a primary, and you don't attack your primary opponent. DeSantis and Haley have spent this whole time attacking each other, and Vivek Ramaswamy and Chris Christie and all this money attacking each other, and they've not said one negative thing about Trump. And it's like, really, the guy that's winning it? That's the guy you should be going after. I mean, it's just been a battle for second place. So, yeah, it looks like Trump's pretty much got this clinched, but we're going to watch this. Rachel Maddow has a guy, and they're going to talk a little bit about what they just talked about on Morning Joe, but I thought this guy was kind of interesting on his take.
Well, I think Joy had it right. Almost half of the base of the Republican Party showing up for this caucus tonight voted against Donald Trump. Think about that. I mean, this is the most famous Republican. He's the guy who, basically built the modern Republican Party, the MAGA Republican Party that Democrats are running against. And half the people in that party didn't vote for Donald Trump. So I think that is telling. It tells you the weakness of Donald Trump and also the opportunity for Democrats.
There are three massively troubling results for Donald Trump out of the highly anticipated Iowa caucus tonight. Now, the first is that Trump won Iowa with 50% of the vote. Look, this guy is the presumptive Republican nominee. He's basically running as the Republican incumbent. He literally claims that he never even lost the last election and that he should be president right now. If that's not presenting himself as the incumbent, I don't know what is. He's got 100% name ID. He claims to wholly own the Republican Party. And yet, in ruby red Iowa, a place so white that I would be surprised if a single person could dance in the entire state, Trump could only garner 50% of the vote? Sure, that's 30 points.
Because that's the big point.
Okay, so I totally suddenly can't get Footloose out of my head.
That's what he was...
where he goes a little down and teaches everybody how to dance.
But I was like that. It's one of the whitest, most Republican states. That's why they do the big primary caucus there. The first one, at least. But yeah, so this should have been the base of the Republican Party. And it's not abnormal for them to be split up a little bit, but not when you have a former president running for office. You would think they would be lockstep behind him because the others don't have a chance. Because this is the base. These people pay attention to politics, right? And he still couldn't get half of them, or barely half of them. And even then, that was low turnout, which means a lot of people just didn't bother showing up. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, a lot of things could happen. Still a lot of campaign left, but Trump's run into another small problem. I don't know that it's going to tank him too much, but it's funny. And David Packman's going to cover it for us real quick here, because this is just hilarious. You're going to love this.
Donald Trump will not be on the Nevada primary ballot. It's not because of an insurrection. It's not because of a court that decided something. It's because they didn't do the paperwork. It's that simple. And it is this sort of incompetence that I welcome in keeping Donald Trump from being president.
So they didn't
file. Wow, okay, so this totally makes me think of the insanity with his lawyer, too. Like, his lawyer just didn't check a damn box. Like, what kind of incompetent idiots does he got working for him?
Well, this is actually a little bit stupider than that. Let's watch a little bit more of this because David will cover this.
They think it's stupider? I didn't even know that was possible.
Oh, this is stupider than they just forgot something. This is way stupider.
This is the Nevada Independent.
Oh, God.
Trump cannot legally qualify for Nevada's 2024 primary ballot. The Supreme Court may consider if states can disqualify Trump from their primaries. No matter how justices rule, it will not alter the Silver State's election. Here's the key paragraph. His absence has nothing to do with any legal challenges to his eligibility to participate. Nevada Supreme Court was never given the opportunity to rule whether Trump violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. This is because Trump's campaign didn't fill out an application to place him on Nevada's primary ballot. As hilarious as it would have been if this was the product of a paperwork snafu committed by an incompetently run campaign, Trump's absence was wholly intentional. They followed the directions provided to them by an incompetently run organization, the Nevada Republican Party, which decided the same primary election process that's been used to elect every other non-presidential Republican candidate, including the governor, is not good enough for presidential candidates. The state party warned presidential campaigns if it saw their candidates' names on the primary ballot, they would be ineligible to participate in and receive delegates from the caucus. Bear in mind, this was made after the caucus was canceled in 2020, and Democrats hosted a caucus that mostly worked.
So this is basically the Nevada GOP blew itself up. No Republican can run for president in Nevada because we have some weird strategy about we don't like the election process.
So, like, we don't like the election process, so we're going to screw ourselves.
Right.
Because now we're thinking, all right, guys, that's who you're voting for to run your entire country. Let's just stop and think about the incompetence there. You don't even have to like the Democratic Party, but come on now. Come on.
At least they're filing their paperwork on time. I mean, if you had to pick between the two employees, who would you pick? The guy who gets the work done on time, or the guy who refuses to do the work?
Well, refusing to do the work in order to prove a point.
I don't know what the point even really is, but even Packard's
I don't know.
He'll cover it a little more, but he's not quite sure what the strategy is here.
As tempting as it might have been, whether Trump was constitutionally eligible, it's not going to make a difference because Trump is not going to be on that ballot. One of the funniest things here about all of this is that we're still going to hear that this is the radical left keeping Trump off the ballot, even though it doesn't have to do with a court. It has to do completely with an incompetent Republican Party in Nevada. The Nevada Republican Party completely upside down on this issue. But they will say, how could Joe Biden do this to him? The weaponized justice.
That's pretty much what the strategy is. We're going to cut off our nose to smite our face, and then we're going to blame our opponent. And say, he did it.
Okay. There we go.
That's their strategy. Oh, man.
Oh, my God. That is just so stupid. So he's got to fight using the Supreme Court to get himself back on certain ballots. And there's one ballot he can't get himself on because his people didn't fill out paperwork.
Yeah, well, Nevada's gone blue the last, since 2008. So I don't think he was going to win it anyway. And it's really only 6 electoral votes. But still, it's like, it's just like... It just shows the incompetence of we just want to stir up some shit so we can later blame somebody else for it and say we're being victimized, even though we're doing it to ourselves. Right?
Victimized by ourselves.
Right. This is the equivalent of pooping your pants and then saying, hey, you pooped my pants. No, I didn't poop your pants. Well, then why is there poop in my pants? That's the whole strategy here.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, we'll cover back into this a little bit in a minute, but I wanted to cover this real quick just for fun. Poor Vivek, he did not do well at the Iowa caucus, right? He only got 7% of the vote. Sad. It's very sad, and we're going to cover it right here. How did he take it?
We have had the field shrink yet again tonight. Vivek Ramaswamy will never again grace our television screens as a presidential candidate. David Clough, are you shocked with the Trump endorsement that apparently went along with his?
I love how they're all laughing. So Vivek got his ass kicked, and it's like, all right, I give up, right? Finally, but everybody's been laughing about. Yeah, everybody's like, good. Nobody wants to see it, but we'll watch them comment on it. But yeah, I love how they're all trying real hard to keep their decorum, and it's just not happening.
His bowing out.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah, I'd like his total number of votes must have been what, 10,000,
something like that.
Think about that. All that time going to all the counties twice, all the money. Remarkable.
Yeah, but the podcast, David. Yeah. He's gonna have. Oh, he does have there's a podcast.
And he might have a Fox show in 2025. So yeah.
Well, only the best.
Yeah.
Only Ben Shapiro has a more annoying voice, so I guess there's a future if Ben can do it. He can do it.
I will say about him, I sometimes feel like I've totally lost my mind covering American politics, and Trump makes you feel that way all the time. There was one kind of little thing I was holding on to, which is that like the polling was very consistent. The more Republicans saw of him, the less they liked him. And I just felt like, okay, I'm just like, not just me. It's crazy here.
Yeah.
Like, my impression of this is the same as the median Republican voter.
The thing that was so amazing was, and the thing I will miss about Vivek Ramaswamy is the way and the special way that Nikki Haley despised him. I feel like her red hot hatred of him was just, it was its own thing. It was fun to watch. It was entertaining, and I'll miss it.
But this idea that, Donald Trump didn't even try, he didn't even show up for the debates, that's not true. He might not have been in Iowa. He had a huge, well-organized machine in the state of Iowa, and he might not have participated in those debates, but in 2024 with political TV, broadcast TV.
Yeah, she's right. He didn't really need to go to the debates. In fact, that would have made no sense for Trump because it could have only hurt him.
Yeah, him talking causes pain to everybody.
Even now, he's losing a lot of viewership, and he's losing a lot of people at his rallies. His rallies have gotten really small because now all he does is he goes up there and he just whines about his court cases. And if you weren't following his court cases, you wouldn't have a clue what he was talking about. It's insane.
Yeah.
But Trump's now facing that whole situation where Colorado has their case, and it looks like the Supreme Court's going to take it on whether or not he can run for office under the 13th Amendment. I think it's Article 3 of the 13th Amendment. Or not Article 3, Section 3, whatever it is. But here's Chris Hayes, and he had a Harvard lawyer on, and he wanted to. Just his prediction on what he thinks is going to happen here, and I think this is really fascinating. So these cases are going to the Supreme Court soon.
Framing for what is being debated before us, what we're ruling on, and the question presented they adopted is the one from Trump's cert petition. And it's a simple one. It said, did the Colorado Supreme Court err in ordering President Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot? And the reason that's interesting is because the Colorado GOP, which also appealed, had much more sort of specific and technical questions presented. But it looks like the court is adopting the kind of broadest possible, which gives them any possible avenue to consider.
I think you're exactly right, Chris. They adopted a question that doesn't constrain them in any way. They are going to decide whether to affirm or reverse the Colorado Supreme Court. There are many
So I want to clarify that. So for those of you who don't know, so lower courts decide fact. The Supreme Court cannot decide what is or is not a fact, just technically speaking.
Okay, so can you give an example of that? Because I think some people will understand better with an example.
Sure. So if let's say I sue Lacey, I work for Lacey and I sue her over harassment of some type, right? If the lower court determines that the harassment occurred, right, and then Lacey takes it to the Supreme Court cannot disagree with that fact because that fact's been established. So they can't disagree with that. Then it's just a matter of, well, what's the question being asked? So the question typically when you ask the Supreme Court, they usually take up very specific points of law. Excuse me. And so the question, like Lacey would say, like in that case of harassment, would be, well, yeah, they determined it was harassment, but it was harassment to the point where I should be getting sued for it, or that I was violating, his employment rights or something like that, right? So it would be a more specific question going in there. This is odd that the Supreme Court, they had two options. They could have taken the Republican Party's petition in Colorado, or they could take Donald Trump's petition. They took Trump's petition. Well, the Republican Party's petition had very specific questions of law that they wanted addressed, right? Which would have constrained the Supreme Court and the decision they could make. But instead, they took Trump's and they rejected the Republican Party's. So now it's a big open question. Did Colorado err in removing him from the ballot? So it's a big open question now that they can kind of answer however they want. So it's left it open. So let's see what he says. So this is Lawrence Tribe again, but let's see how he takes it. Because I think it's fascinating that they went this way. Because it's abnormal. It's not usual to do this.
Ramps, there are many approaches. What is interesting is that if you are a strict textualist, you really read the words of the 14th Amendment, Section 3. 14th Amendment. Or if you are a so-called originalist, a historian, someone like Jack Rakov of Stanford, a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, leaves no doubt that the right answer would be the one that conservatives would give. It is more prudential moderates and liberals like Kagan and Jackson and Sotomayor who might wring their hands over the broad systemic impact on democracy. That's an ironic situation. It's filled with ironies. I mean, if you read the briefing submitted by Donald Trump and also by the Republicans of Colorado, it's filled with paeans of praise to democracy. The people should not be deprived of their vote. But Mr. Raffensperger, can't you just find me 11,180 of them? This is all about depriving the people of the right to end a presidency by engaging in what a detailed trial in Colorado concluded was insurrection. I don't think the court is likely to take a technical off-ramp. I don't think it's likely to hold, that the words of the oath that the president took to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution didn't use the word support the Constitution, and therefore the president is not covered. I don't think they're going to take a kind of technical, highly legalistic approach. I think that the conservatives are going to have to establish that they mean what they say. And the one way they could do that is to say that although the original meaning of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was that you didn't have to be tried or convicted of insurrection as long as there was a determination that you were an insurrectionist, Congress didn't need to create a special scheme to do that because people knew what the score was at the time of the Confederacy. But now you have to become a little bit of a living constitutionalist. Right. Decades have passed. Now things are different. Now there's a lot more controversy about the meaning of these terms. Now we need to wait for Congress to figure it all out and put a procedure in place that is more uniform nationwide. That would be a plausible decision, not one consistent with genuine textualism or originalism, but one that might make sense to the broad middle of the court. At the same time, they've got this very easy case about absolute presidential immunity, or whether the fact that he was on.
Yeah, he's going to go up. The immunity case is not going to float. I don't know that they're even going to take that one up. Because what ended up happening was his attorney argued, I think it was the DC Circuit or the DC Appeals Court. They argued about absolute immunity for the president. And one of the judges asked, so wait a minute, does that mean a president could assassinate his political rival and he'd have absolute immunity? And this attorney couldn't answer that question. Because that's essentially what they're arguing, is that he should have absolute immunity. Well, if that's the case, then Biden could have Trump killed tomorrow, and that would be legal.
Right.
Right? So it's one of these, well, yeah, he should have absolute immunity, but only this guy, not the other president, not the current president, just this former. See, it's such a labored argument. What he's pointing out is there's two arguments in the Supreme Court, and there's two views. The liberal justices, right, Kagan, and they tend to be more of this living Constitution, right? They believe the Constitution can change and be altered, and that it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily has to be verbatim all the time, right? There can be interpretation. Now, that's more of a liberal kind of view, like, for example, you can say, well, look, just because, we had the right to bear arms, I mean, historically speaking, that wasn't always the case. Hey, the whole OK Corral fight was because they made it illegal to carry guns in town, which they could legally do back then. It wasn't until 2012 that the Supreme Court said, no, anybody should be able to carry a gun anywhere, right? So it comes to this sort of, it's a fluid sort of situation depending on what's happening, right? Well, now the problem is that the conservative justices, Thomas Alito, Roberts, and those guys, they don't believe that. They believe in, a more textual understanding of the Constitution, right? Well, in order for them to sit there and go, well, we're going to let Trump slide on this, they'd have to throw out the 13th Amendment and ignore the actual text, which is what his point was, is that puts them in a horrible position. And then they've got to side with basically the liberal view of a living Constitution, which undercuts every decision they're going to make going forward and every decision they've made since they've been there. Because they've argued against that.
And watch them do it.
Right. And the other thing is Neil Gorsuch, who's one of the Supreme Court justices, he was actually a justice in Colorado, and he's ruled on stuff like this before, for impeachments and things, and taking people off the ballot. And he's already ruled previously that in this sort of situation, like Trump's in, he shouldn't be allowed on the ballot. And now for a conservative justice to be in this position where Colorado, right, the state of Colorado is using his own judgments against him.
Oh, no.
In the filing of the court. So his point...
Lord, welcome to the shit show.
Right. So Mr. Tribe's point here is, I think what they're probably going to do is they took this vague sort of thing, and they can either rule it down or they can rule against Trump, which is the obvious answer, right? And there's plenty of contextual evidence to back that up, and the text is pretty literal on this. And you can't sit there and say, well, he has to be tried of insurrection, because insurrection wasn't a crime when they wrote the 13th Amendment. It hadn't been written down as a crime. So when they wrote it, everybody knew that, no, this wasn't because you had to commit the crime and be convicted of a crime. It was, the court just has to find that you committed insurrection. That's it. That's the only standard. So you can't run that case. So his whole thought is, what they'll probably do is they'll kick it to Congress and say, hey, you know what? We can't really decide on this. Congress is going to have to make a decision. You see how divided Congress is right now? There's no way they're going to be able to make a definitive decision on this. Not with a split Congress. And it could be really bad because it looks like the Democrats might take the House again in 2024, which means you'll have a Democratic Senate and House making this decision. Right? But it's a way for the Supreme Court to kick the can out of their court. and just watch their hands at the whole situation.
And so they could kick it to Congress. Now, what would explain more clearly what allows them to do that?
With the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Yeah, they can say...
What allows them to kick it to Congress?
Because only Congress can alter the Constitution or make a finding on the Constitution. So they can sit there and go, well, look, we can interpret the Constitution, but in this case, because it's non-specific, we're going to defer to Congress to make a more definitive statement about the 13th, this section of the 13th Amendment or the 14th Amendment. Sorry. So they can sit there and go.
But they could be like, I don't know, it's not here. Well, it's not here. It's your job to put something here.
Right.
They could basically do that.
That we could interpret, right? So they could sit there and go, well, there's not enough here to really make a decision, so we're going to just defer it to Congress. My point is what are the odds Congress is going to come up with any sort of bill or ratification or anything that will solve this issue before the election?
Well, right now they can't get anything done.
Right. They might lose their speaker, which we'll cover here in just a second. But the thing about that is so now you're in a situation where they kick it to Congress. Well, it could take a year before Congress gets anything even remotely ready to pass. Right? So what does that do? It kicks it all back to the states to make their own decisions about how each state's going to handle it. But the Supreme Court gets to wash its hands of the whole thing and walk away without making a decision. What
do you think the odds are they actually do that?
I don't know. I think it's an interesting point that he's making, though, which is, I mean, what else are they going to do? The other thing they can do is they can either rule down the states, which really puts them in a bind, because now you're arguing a states' rights issue, and some of the states are going to revolt on that, right? Because you're taking away states' rights, which is the 10th Amendment, right? Anything not covered is deferred to the individual states, right? So that's a big, sticky wicket to get in, right? That's a pickle and a half. So I doubt they're going to do that. And I think his point is really good. He's like, other than they could rule against Trump, but I don't think the conservatives are going to want to do that. Right? So what's their only option? Their option is, like we said last time, to find a way to weasel their way out of it. And what he's just pointed out is here's a perfect way to weasel their way out of it. And the fact that they chose Trump's Supreme Court case over the Republican parties, they chose the vague one over the specific one, because on the specific one, they'd have to make a ruling. On the vague one, they could just go, well, it's too vague. So it's a little telling that they picked the one they picked, because it looks like that's going to be their off-ramp. That's what his point was. I think it's genius, but he could be right. He could be wrong. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's such a weird thing, but I think he's got a good point here where that's pretty telling that they picked that one over the other one. The fact that they did that tells you that they have some sort of strategy here that they want to play out. I mean, they're not slow, but
wow.
So we'll see how. We'll see how it plays out.
We'll see how the next chapter goes on this one.
Yeah, but speaking about if it does get kicked back to Congress, well, Congress has got other problems. Well, at least the Republicans in Congress have another problem. So other than the fact that this is now going to go down in history as the least productive Congress in the history of the United States, which is funny because the previous Republican Congress under Trump was the least productive. And then the Democrats, when Pelosi was in charge, they got a lot done. Right? And now we have nothing done again. And part of it's because they kept fighting over Speaker and who's going to be the Speaker. They finally landed on Mike Johnson, who's a theocrat. He's a nutball to be Speaker. But Mike Johnson's run into some problems, and they're going to cover this on the Majority Report real quick. Mike Johnson's run into some issues lately.
My gosh.
If you'll recall, back in December, I guess, was it November or December, there was a Republican Speaker of the House named Kevin McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was desperate to stay in office and get his time in the sun. And so he agreed with a couple of the Freedom Caucus members to put in a provision where like one person could basically bring him up for a vote. And that happened. The Republicans had about a 8-vote cushion against the Democrats. The Democrats are like, well, we're not going to vote for you to be Speaker of the House because you're from the other party. And why would we do that?
Yeah.
And the McCarthy couldn't get those 9 votes that he needed from Republicans. And so he was ousted. And there was, I don't know, about 5 or 6 failed attempts to elect someone else to be Speaker. And then ultimately they decided on the one of the biggest theocrats in the House, somebody who apparently does not believe in having any interest-bearing bank accounts, so that he doesn't have to reveal his assets.
I forgot about that. That was the other weird thing about Mike Johnson, is he doesn't have any bank accounts, so he doesn't have to expose what his assets are.
What a freaking weirdo.
I know, so he could take...
Yeah, vote for that guy.
Yeah, he could be taking all kinds of money, but we'll get to it back here. We'll get back to Sam and Emma here. But yeah, it's weird.
To anybody. A guy who is about as extreme as it gets and certainly is looking to impose a theocracy in this country, but also knows that, you got to lie for the Lord. And the Lord has told us to sometimes you've got to, function as a sheep in wolf's clothing or a wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever it is. But everyone was talking about how these conservatives have been able to sort of control their party, these 9 people, at different times it was slightly different 9, and bring them to their knees. And it turns out, well, that didn't happen, really. There are 2 deadlines for funding to run out for the government. One is on January 19th. The second one is in the first week of February. And there are different things that are going to run out of money at different times. There's a partial government shutdown on the 19th and the full government shutdown by February 2nd. Mike Johnson has come to a deal with Chuck Schumer on how to fund the government. Now,
Sam will probably cover this a little bit, but I want to cover it real quick. So what happened was he can't get the Republicans to vote to avoid the government shutdown, which is really devastating because they got away with it under Obama, blaming Obama for them shutting down the government. They got away with it to a degree, but now they've done it so many times, everybody knows it's the Republicans. There's no mystery to it.
It's like, okay, you're doing this shit again.
Even Fox News is bitching about it, right? So Mike Johnson has to cut a deal, right, to try and get this done. Well, his caucus won't back him. So who does he go to? He goes to Chuck Schumer and the Democrats to get the votes to cut a deal to keep the government open. Well, if you remember, back in November, December, that's what happened to Kevin McCarthy. And that's why they ousted him. It's because he went to the Democrats to cut a deal, and they wanted to be able to continue to blackmail over the debt ceiling. Well, now Mike Johnson's just done the exact same thing that got McCarthy ousted. And so now he's in a bind, a similar bind that McCarthy was in.
On is that we need a massive military budget that dwarfs like all the rest of the world's military budgets combined.
Right.
Because, of course, of some looming threat. Like, let's say, I don't know, we're invaded from outer space. We need to spend almost $900 billion on our military, and that's just the money that is like on that line item. There's a lot of other things that are sort of they end up feeding into the military from other directions. Our discretionary budget, our non-military discretionary budget, I should say, is closer to $775 billion. So basically,
the rest of it.
The rest of it. And this does not include the non-discretionary, which is like Social Security and Medicare. Fortunately, that stuff is sort of sequestered away. But Mike Johnson announced that they struck a deal and they cut whatever it was. And it turns out that no, all he did was follow almost the exact same deal that Kevin McCarthy had. The big change was, you'll remember in the Inflation Reduction Act, the Democrats passed $80 billion to beef up the IRS over the course of 10 years. Some people were very upset about that because they're libertarians or they're conservatives and they don't believe that the U.S. government should be collecting taxes. But the IRS has been going after wealthier people. They have been the Treasury Secretary made a vow that we're not going to go after anybody making less than $400,000. You can look at graphs and look when the IRS gets defunded, the number of people who are on the lowest end of the income spectrum get an increase in scrutiny because it's much cheaper to go after them. That's the low-hanging fruit. It's like literally like in terms of, because for every dollar that you spend with the IRS, you get an average about $6 in return. But if they don't have the funding to go after complex cases, which is what rich people have because they have lawyers and accountants to hide their money, it's essentially like I can pick up a bunch of fruit that's on the ground, that's fallen off the tree. The quality of that fruit and the amount of fruit I'm going to get from it, because I have to cut off the pieces that are rotten, is going to be less, but I can do more volume. But if I could go and reach the fruit that is higher up, I'm going to get bigger payload there, but I don't have the money for the cherry pickers, essentially.
Yeah.
That's the metaphor. But with that said, $80 billion over 10 years.
Okay, so just to clarify why this is such a big deal with the IRS deal. So the IRS has been heavily underfunded for years. I mean, you and I both know, we go back 5 or 6 years ago even, and we could call the IRS, you'd get somebody on the phone within 20 minutes, right? Nowadays, it could take 3 or 4 hours, if not a whole day, before you get somebody. Just because they've been so understaffed. But now they've gotten $80 billion over the next few years. They're hiring a lot more people, but they're hiring a bunch of new agents. And the reason they're pushing that is because tax revenue is not doing great, but our deficit spending has gone way up. Well, one way to increase tax revenue is to start auditing all these wealthy people who've been getting away with not paying their taxes for years and years and years because there's no cops available to go hunt them down. Right? When his whole point was when the IRS was underfunded and there were very few IRS agents, they didn't have the money to go after these people or the resources. So when they did audits, who did they go after? They went after people making under $200,000 a year. People making under $100,000. So the rich people were getting away with not paying their taxes, but the middle and lower incomes were getting raped. So that was part of the deal is McCarthy tried to do this, didn't really work. And then Mike Johnson's trying to do this now where he's like, well, let's cut the funding to the IRS because that'll make his constituents happy because his constituents are mostly rich guys. So that's what a lot of this scam was going for. But the Republicans are upset because that's what they want really bad.
Years, the Democrats agreed with McCarthy in a deal where they would cut $20 billion of that $80 billion, and they would do it over 2 years. Well, Mike Johnson
has got that $20 billion in 1 year so that he can claim that he cut the budget more and sell it to conservatives. The problem is he knows he's full of it. He didn't even tell his Republican colleagues that he was doing it, which they're pissed about.
Yeah.
And it looks like we're back to the drawing board where the Republicans are, some of these conservatives are going to shut down the government. After all that, they got nothing of what they wanted.
Can I read you this quote from Punchbowl? According to Jake Sherman of Punchbowl, this is from a very well-connected House Republican. Significant concerns growing about Mike's ability to jump to this level and deliver conservative wins. Growing feeling that he's in way, way over his head. As much as there was valid criticism and frustration with Kevin, Mike is struggling to grow into the job and is just getting rolled even more than McCarthy did. It's
which is funny to me because he's only had the job for a couple months. On top of that,
man, at this point, why would you even apply for this job? Because nobody can stay in it at this point. You signing up for this job is you literally knowing you're gonna get tossed out on your ear.
Well, or at least humiliated, because what's going to happen here is the Republicans aren't going to go with him on this, and they're going to try and shut down the government. And Republicans are going to get blamed. On top of that fact, even if he survives, which would actually be better for Democrats, which is probably why Schumer was willing to cut this deal with him, the reason it's better for Democrats is because Kevin McCarthy was the highest fundraiser in the political caucus, in the Republican political caucus in the House. Kevin McCarthy was raising hundreds of millions of dollars a year for elections. Mike Johnson can't do that. The donors don't like him. He's not raising anything. So, of course, Schumer and all these guys, yeah, Mike, we'll cut a deal, $20 billion, fine. We'll give it to you in 1 year. Sure. That way you can say that. They're happy to have it because they know they're like, okay, he's not going to raise any money. We'll sweep him in November. And then come January when we have the House again, we'll just reverse all this shit. Because we'll have the House and the Senate.
Oh man, it's such a shit show over there. I can't even take it.
Well, it's good news for the Democrats, but it's that's kind of what's going on here. Is he's kind of between a rock and a hard place because he can't get his constituents together, and they're already. I mean, he's got all the MAGA people, and they're nuts, and they're screaming, "Yeah, let's shut it all down." And it's like, why? Because the IRS is going to go after Elon Musk or somebody. I mean, it doesn't affect you.
Right.
In fact, it might increase your benefits because there'll be more tax dollars. Anyway.
So do we have anything more on Republicans Gone Wild?
We have one more thing I wanted to go to just for fun, but another Republican who's really shot themselves in the foot here. This has been kind of what's been going on. But one of our favorites, Lauren Boebert, the Boebert. So other than the Beetlejuice fiasco where she got caught vaping and feeling a guy up, and he was feeling her up at the Beetlejuice musical, which we have to reiterate was a matinee.
A matinee.
It wasn't
geared toward families and children.
Right, more children than adults. Anyway, so that was that. Then she's had a couple instances now, just in the last few months, where it's been domestic violence incidents with her ex-husband. And she recently had one we covered last week where she's now potentially being charged.
I didn't hit Jason. Right.
Potentially being charged with assault. Well, part of it is she almost lost her election last time in 2022. Things are looking really, really bad for her. So what she did was she packed up her stuff. She said, okay, I'm not going to run in that district anymore. I'm going to run in this other district that's much more conservative in Colorado. This is what we call carpet bagging. You pick up your carpet, you take it to another district where you have a better shot of winning, right? So that's what she's doing. And that has already started to go bad for her, even though she just announced it a week or two ago.
Lauren Boebert is...
So this is Farron, I forget his last name, but he has a show called Fair and Balanced. So
finding out very quickly that
Farron
you cannot run away from your problems. especially if you don't actually try to run away from your problems. I mean, she went from the 3rd district to the 4th district in Colorado, so literally the neighboring district. Y'all share a border. And voters, her new constituents in that district, are already sick and tired of her, and many of them clearly seem to just straight up hate her. On Friday, The Independent published a massive new report where they actually went and they spoke to voters in her new district, including some Republican officials, including some Democrats. But here's what they found. They found that overall, there's a general sentiment that people don't like her. Okay? They call her a carpetbagger. Yep. They say that she is, basically district shopping, that this is just a power grab for her to keep her job because she's got nothing else to fall back on. It was actually funny because one of the Republicans they talked to mentioned that, and I had said that a couple weeks ago. So they're like, yeah, obviously she wants this because she doesn't have another job. But let me read you some of these quotes. This is a local Republican official who said, quote, "You might be shocked at how many people are not happy about it. This just naked power-seeking behavior to save the seat doesn't really sit well." Another one said, "You can imagine the campaign ads that her opponents are going to run. It's going to be dark, grainy footage of her in the Beetlejuice theater." And that was actually in response to the fact that there are some voters in that district that the Independent spoke to that didn't know about the Beetlejuice thing. They didn't know about it. They didn't know about the incident, a week and a half ago or whatever in the restaurant with her ex-husband. So there's...
Well, it's more of a rural community. These people have regular jobs. They're not watching C-SPAN all day. I mean...
Right. Well, and you might have a lot of older folks that, wouldn't be like on the internet necessarily, finding it on political YouTube or something,
Right. And they're probably not watching a ton of cable news and stuff like that. But that's the deal is already it looks like she won't even make it through the primary to the actual election. She might be out of the primary here in the next couple months when it goes through. And she might be gone before the election even starts.
Oh my God.
She'll be in her lame duck session. So
Lauren, girl, you got to get it together here.
Things are just getting worse and worse for her. Okay, so we're back. I wanted to talk about today what's coming up with the election. So the big financial issue, I think we need to talk about coming up with the election, and not just the markets or anything, but the tax situation, because that's going to change pretty drastically here coming up in 2025. So whoever gets elected this next year is going to have a big say on how much you end up paying in taxes. And your taxes are about to shoot up pretty dramatically in 2025, especially if you make under $400,000 a year. So, yeah, I want to cover a little bit of what's going on with that and why it's important. And then we'll cover some of the other issues that the IRS is looking at. So here's Alex Wagner, and she's going to cover this real quick.
I want to tell you the story of two Americas. The America that Donald Trump lives in and the America everybody else lives in.
At Trump University, we teach success. That's what it's all about. Success. It's going to happen to you.
That was Donald Trump's pitch for Trump University 2 decades ago. He marketed his school as a shortcut to financial success. You just had to pay him and his instructors first, and then you would know everything you needed to make it big. The only problem was that it was all a scam. As a result, Trump eventually settled a civil fraud case for $25 million. And that case gave us real insight into how Donald Trump views the average American.
Trump University, a series of for-profit real estate seminars launched in 2005. Ads promised that Donald Trump would handpick the instructors, but as a rule, he did not. A set of playbooks for the sales team coached them on how to market the courses, even to single mothers with 3 children who, quote, may need money for food.
That is how Donald Trump sees America, a country that is just filled with easy marks and fools to be scammed by a millionaire who deserves their money more than their children need food. At the same time, this is the America that everyone else lives in. This is Frances Sharples. In 2022, she was scammed out of $655,000 from her retirement fund by international criminals posing as tech support and bank employees. Now, that alone would be misfortune enough, but then Frances Sharples got hit with $100,000 in taxes. Taxes on the transactions where she was scammed out of her retirement money. Taxes on money she no longer has.
So, get this. So, because I've known clients who've had this happen where somebody contacts you saying there's a problem with your computer, right? And it's because they placed a virus on your computer. They sent you some phishing email with a virus, and then they call them up, and then they want full access to the computer, and then they get access to all your bank accounts and everything. And that's what happened to her, essentially. She got robbed of her entire life savings, her entire retirement, $650,000. But because that money was withdrawn, she still had to pay taxes on all of it.
Right.
Well, it used to be you didn't have to, but something changed.
Now, if that shocks you, it is because that IRS policy is relatively new. Do you remember when Trump and Republicans passed their big quote-unquote tax cut in 2017? The main thing that bill actually did was cut taxes for corporations and the ultra-wealthy. And to make up for that massive loss in government revenue, Trump and his Republican allies in Congress suspended something called the casualty and theft deduction, which means that if you are the victim of a scam, you still have to pay taxes on the financial transactions involved in that scam. And that is how Frances Sharples ended up footing the bill for all those ultra-wealthy corporate tax cuts after she lost her retirement money. Now, Democrats...
Now, the whole thing is we got to go back to back when they did the Trump tax cuts, right? So that act was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. All right, what it did essentially was it cut taxes for mostly the wealthy and corporations, but it also cut your taxes. Here was the catch. It cut taxes, it cut a bunch of loopholes, right? But what ends up happening is in 2025, for those of us who are lower than $400,000 a year or we're not wealthy, all of our tax cuts expire and it goes back up in order to cover the loss from all the tax cuts from the rich. So it's a pretty devastating situation that's going to happen here in the not too distant future. Where did I see if I found it somewhere? I might not have gotten it, but anyway, but that's the thing that's going to happen is your taxes are about to shoot up in 2025. They've already started to go up. Now, initially with that tax cut, the way they kind of scammed everybody with it, the Paul Ryan did it was, oh, everybody's going to get a tax cut. And you did. But what they did was they lowered the amount of required withdrawals from employers. So all of a sudden, yeah, your paycheck went up a little bit every month. But then at the end of the year, you didn't get as much in return because you didn't pay it in.
Right. So what essentially happened to me, I'll even use myself as an example, is I saw $30 more in my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the year, I actually had to pay in 3 times what I had the previous year,
Mm-hmm.
which was way more than the $30 that went into my paycheck.
Right. Because
So it really did me more damage. It didn't actually do me any good. Oh yeah, $30 more per pay period, but I paid 3 times that when I paid in.
Oh, no. It ended up hurting the poor a lot more. But that was initially how they tricked you was, oh, so you're going to see more every month in your paycheck. Well, that's true. But then at the end of the year, I'm going to owe a lot of that back.
I owed that and then some. Yeah.
Because you raised tax. So that's what's going to happen. So just be prepared that your taxes are going to go up. And I'm going to have Robert Wright talk to you a little bit about this. Is it Robert Reich? Yeah, right here.
It's now official. Congress's own research arm, the Congressional Research Service, released a report concluding that the Trump Republican tax cut was a total bust. Number one, it did not spur economic growth. According to the report, quote, the growth effects tend to show a relatively small, if any, first-year effect on the economy. Number two, it didn't raise wages. Quote, the real wage rate for production and non-supervisory workers grew by only 1.2%. Number three, it didn't cause corporations to bring money home. Again, quoting from the report, the data do not appear to show a significant increase in investment flows from abroad. Number four, it saved corporations a boatload of money. Quote, corporate tax revenues were about $40 billion less than projected. Number five, corporations use the savings to boost share prices and executive pay, but not workers' pay. Again, quoting from the report, while evidence does indicate significant repurchases of shares, either from tax cuts or repatriated revenues, relatively little was directed to paying worker bonuses, which had been announced by some firms. So there you have it, folks. Trump's one big legislative achievement is now officially a big nothing burger for Americans, but a giant sop to big corporations, CEOs, and the rich.
And he's not half kidding about that, because what ended up happening was to repatriate a lot of the money. They said, okay, we'll give bigger tax cuts to corporations, right? And the thought was, okay, if we do that, and the wealthy people, it's still some of that trickle down thinking, but the thought was they'll repatriate more of their money that they're hiding overseas to avoid paying taxes and invest it back into the U.S. markets, which they did. But the thought was okay, they'll invest it into more jobs, which they didn't, because now all of a sudden they had these huge tax cuts, they had these huge windfalls. Well, what did they do? Well, it's cheaper to get labor overseas, but I brought more money back to the U.S. But none of it went to the workers. It went to repurchasing stock shares. It went to investments in the market, but it didn't go back to the working class at all. So there was no wage growth that came from it. It didn't help the economy at all, because none of that money went into the economy. It went into the market. So Trump would always brag about, well, the markets are up. Yeah, because you've artificially inflated them with this huge tax break.
Sure.
Right. On top of that fact, what ended up really screwing over workers in that deal was a lot of these companies, like I can't remember what they had the Foxconn deal, and that fell through. But what was it? Was it GM? Maybe I can't remember for certain. But there were several of these companies, and what they did was they said, okay, yeah, we'll hire whatever 20 or 30,000 more people or whatever it is, right? And they'd be like, oh, great, see, it's working. And they were like, yeah, but we're going to fire them all next year. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use the money to expand our automated systems and replace those workers with machines, which has been the bigger culprit of a lot of these factory kind of jobs going away. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So it ended up being great if you were ultra rich, but it ended up being a real nightmare if you weren't and you were poor. I mean, and the U.S. Household share went way down of income. Now, we've talked about this, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. The economy's gotten better, and wage growth has actually started to go up and beat inflation for the first time in forever. But what was a lot of it that spurred it? Some of it was a lot of people getting out of the workforce because of COVID. COVID in general, but the government dumped a lot of money back into the workforce, and they give money directly to workers to stay home. So these people had extra money in savings, and then they realized, well, wait a minute, my quality of life is better during COVID because I'm not working 2 jobs just to stay alive. So that people got out and said, well, I'd rather make less than have more of my life instead of killing myself all the time. Which was
right, absolutely
part of that whole quiet quitting thing. And then what happened was you had a huge tightening of the labor market because you had all these old people leave, and then you had all these young people going, screw it. I'm not working for less than that. And so now what happened is wages have had to shoot up. And inflation's now gone down quite a bit. It's gone down pretty consistently. Up until recently, December, it went up a little bit. But yeah, it was like 22 months before that of decreasing inflation, right? So things were doing really well. But what was it that caused it? It wasn't tax cuts. It was government investment back into the market, back into infrastructure bills, infrastructure plans, creating new jobs. But that's money you directly throw into the system, right? So it's like, hey, corporations, I'll give you this benefit of this money or these really cheap loans or whatever, but you have to create jobs with them. If you don't, you owe us all the money back with interest, whatever the maximum interest is, and fines or whatever it is. So now the corporations are forced to hire more people if they want to get that money. As opposed to with the tax system, there's nothing stopping them from moving the money around wherever the fuck they want. So just my point is, basically cutting taxes doesn't exactly improve the situation here. But I wanted to get into, where's this article? This happened a lot.
Well, there's certainly more to it. There's certainly a lot more to it than that. It's not as straightforward as that, you know.
Well, yeah, but what's happened is, and it's starting to slow a little bit, but it went up dramatically prior to COVID, and then some after COVID. And this had been going on since Obama, and Obama had recognized this, and we talked a little bit about the expansion of the IRS on this issue. There's billions and billions of tax dollars not getting paid each year by employers because they classify their employees as independent contractors and not W-2 employees, actual workers. And so they can get away without paying them benefits, and they can get away without paying their share of their Social Security and their Medicare.
Right.
So it all gets dumped on the worker. And I wanted to pull up this article from the Economic Policy Institute, and they talk about this, the economic cost of worker misclassification. So I'm sure a lot of you out here have dealt with this, or you know somebody who's dealt with this, where, you know, they work for their employer, and their employer pretty much controls their schedule and what the tools they have are and where they work and when they work, but they classify them as independent contractors, even though they're employees. Because an independent contractor can choose when they want to work and what hours. The independent contractors get paid for a result. They don't get paid for time.
Right.
Right. So they will misclassify them. So here they did. So 2020 EPI analysts of 11 commonly misclassified jobs estimates the cost of independent contractor status to these workers. For example, a typical construction worker as an independent contractor would lose out on as much as $16,729 per year in income and job benefits compared with what they would have earned as an employee. That's a lot of money. A typical home health aide as an independent contractor would lose out on as much as $9,500 a year. And this goes to a lot of different types of workers. And they go through this article, and let me pull it down. So the cost to workers, here it is, Table 1. All right. If you're a construction worker, your median annual income as a W-2 employee, you'd be making about $48,210. All right. Your value to you as a worker, as an employee, because you get benefits and other things, would be about $52,398. So on the low estimate, if you're an independent contractor, you'd be getting around $35,000 to a maximum of $42,000. So even on the high end, you're not getting nearly what you'd get.
No.
Right? Let me scroll over on this. So same one, we'll stick with the top, construction worker. Range of cost to worker, that would be $10,000, right? 48 minus 42, right? The 52 minus the 42, my bad. The high end of the cost would be that. And so the estimated cost of the worker, 19.4% to up to 32%, 31.9. This is what it's costing you. It's costing around a minimum of 17 to 20% and as much as 34%. around 25 to 30% of your income going to your employer because they don't have to pay you.
Right.
I mean, that's insane.
Sometimes what it looks like on the surface is sometimes it looks like on the surface, you're going to get paid a little more. It looks like your wage is going to be a little higher. So it looks enticing to do that. But when you factor in those benefits that you lose in having to deal with Social Security on your own, you come out way, way, way under. So if you're going to take that 1099 gig, you got to get paid significantly more in order for it to shake out, not just the little bit higher that they show you.
Right.
Otherwise, you do not come out on top.
No, and so let's do this for example. The other problem is if you're an independent contractor, your boss isn't putting money into your taxes every month from your paychecks, or every 2 weeks, whatever it is you get paid. That's where they have the withholdings, federal, state, and what's called FICA.
Right.
FICA.
You have to withhold it on your own.
You have to do that on your own. So a lot of times, independent contractors who don't, especially the younger, don't realize this. Is you get to the end of the year, and they didn't save any money because they didn't think about, I haven't been paying any taxes all year. And then all of a sudden they get a huge tax bill at the end of the year and they haven't saved anything to pay it.
And furthermore, some of my clients, a lot of my clients have been left holding the bag for, that situation. But furthermore, you're supposed to be sort of paying as you earn on your taxes.
Ideally.
So you end up getting penalized for not having paid in quarterly by waiting. Now, those penalties don't often shake out to be huge amounts, but you're still paying more than you needed to be paying in penalties because you didn't have it going in regular increments.
Right. Well, here's the other catch to the independent contractor thing where I know especially this is really devastating if you're at median or average income, right? So I'm just going to use Salem, Oregon here, not too far from where I live. So this is just a tax calculator, just a basic tax calculator for the year. So I took a guy or girl who's single and lives in Salem, Oregon, making $50,775. So around median household income. Okay. Factored in their tax. Okay. So their full tax for the year, federal income plus FICA, and then state tax. You have to factor it on top of that. Right. So total together for federal and FICA, they'd be paying $8,095. And then they'd have to pay another $3,541 in state tax. So they'd be paying $11,636 in taxes out of their 50-something thousand. So their take home would be about $39,000, right? Now, if you're an independent contractor, you might be able to take some deductions on work expense and stuff like that. But you're basically, your total effective tax rate's about 22.92% of the total amount you earned, right? However, if you're an independent contractor, you see this, FICA, right? Your effective tax rate is 7.65. In reality, that tax rate is actually double that. It's 15.3%. If you're a W-2 employee, your employer is responsible for paying half that. That's why you only pay 7.65, because your employer is paying the other 7.65 for the right to employ you. But if you're an independent contractor, you're stuck with that whole bill. So you got that $11,300 or $11,636 total with state that I've added to this. Well, you've also got to double this number, the FICA number, because if you're an independent contractor, you're paying both your half and the employer half because you're self-employed. So you got to add another $3,884 to your $11,000, and now you're paying $15,500 in tax. So you're paying an extra $4,000 almost for a single person making $5,500, right?
Yeah.
So if I do that, now your effective tax rate isn't 22.92, It's 30.57%. That
Yeah,
is
ouch.
devastating.
Yeah, that's a big blow. That's
That
a
is
big blow right
huge
there.
blow. Yep. I mean, just to give you a better sense of what that looks like, I'll do this real quick. That's an extra $1,300 a month that you have to pay in taxes because your employer wasn't paying it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Plus, we can go back. I want to go back to this one real quick. What we're also not factoring, we're just factoring the extra tax. We're not factoring the fact that employers are also required to give you certain benefits, like 2 weeks off sick leave. A lot of employers will give you 2 weeks vacation. A lot of employers are required to give you 401ks and match them. So you're not getting any of those things. So they cover the cost of social insurance here, right? Social Security, which we just covered. And then they talk about some of the recommendations for how to tackle this. But this is part of what the IRS and part of this big boost to move more money into the IRS is about preventing this from happening. Because the problem is if you as an independent contractor go to your employer and say, no, I'm a W-2 employee, you have 2 options or 3 options. You can either shut up and do nothing, potentially lose your job, or 3, sue them. And what are the odds that on your $30-something thousand a year that you're taking home, you can afford to sue your employer? Because it's not cheap.
No. No, you're not going to afford that.
Right. So when we talk about the 2 things here, one is, I mean, the independent contractor situation, that affects a lot of people, and that number of people is going up and up, and it's mostly misclassified. So if you're in that situation, you really shouldn't be thinking about voting for Trump or for the Republicans, because they're not going to change that. And they're not going to change any of these laws. And for everybody in general making under $400,000 a year, get ready for your taxes to go up by about 4 or 5%.
Right.
Just in general. Plus, you're not going to get the benefits like you get robbed, you're screwed. You know.
God, yeah, that story is devastating.
Well, right now there is a bipartisan deal from I know Ron Wyden from Oregon here, and he pushed this to basically with a Republican, so it's a bipartisan bill. It's not likely to pass, but what he wants to do is bring back the child tax credit, not to what it fully was before, but you realize that we had the lowest child poverty rates right after COVID, child hunger, child food insecurity rates, because parents were getting this child tax credit every month. And it wasn't a lot of money. Right. It was a few $100. It wasn't a lot of money. But it made a huge...
But it makes a difference. A few $100 makes a difference.
Yes. Like, I think they estimated it was like 15 or 20 million children were taken out of food insecurity and poverty because of this.
I mean, a few $100, that's like a good chunk of people's grocery bills.
But the Republicans and Joe Manchin got that removed, even though the Democrats tried to keep it. Ron Wyden's trying to bring it back. And in exchange, what he's given up is, okay, well, we'll let some of the... We'll cancel some of the tax loopholes that we closed for corporations, and they can have those tax loopholes back. So he's given a smaller, bigger, kind of a slightly bigger cut in taxes to the corporations, but he's doing it in return for, well, let's try and alleviate child poverty, because now we've got 15 children more back in poverty because we cut that program. And that's a huge difference in 15 million people's lives. Those are kids that are more likely to go to school, more likely to go to college, more likely to have better jobs, less likely to commit crime. Right? So, yeah, big deal with all that stuff. Anyway, just keep that in mind when you go to the polls. But
yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I wanted to talk real quick. We had talked about this before, and we hadn't gotten around to doing it, but I kind of wanted to cover it because you'd mentioned it before in the past. So I have a bit here from CNBC, and they're talking about this concept called lifestyle creep, which Lacey will get into more here in a minute. But this is an important thing to understand, just with your own personal finances. This is not necessarily political. This is more about your personal finance and how you budget going forward, and why this is important to be aware of, because it does happen to pretty much everybody.
More than half of Americans with an income of $100,000 a year or higher say they're living paycheck to paycheck. This may be the result of a sneaky behavioral phenomenon called lifestyle creep.
Lifestyle creep is the common pattern of making a little more money and starting to spend a little bit more money. It happens almost automatically. I think people hold these benchmarks in their mind. If I reach this position or I get this promotion or I make it to this age, then I can live this life, or then I deserve to have these things. And then they kind of go a little crazy or go a little wild on it. And then it becomes like a trade-off. Like they only can enjoy their present happiness and they're not able to save or plan for the future.
There's something, in behavioral science or behavioral finance, behavioral finance. This is the old story about the guy and his girlfriend go to Vegas and get married, and she falls asleep early, and then he finds like $100 in his wallet, so he goes downstairs and he puts it on the roulette table. Right, he doesn't really know what he's doing, and he puts the $100 down and he puts it on like 20. And sure enough, it hits 20, but he doesn't realize in roulette that pays 72 to 1. So now he's got $7,200. And they're like, he's so excited, he's not paying attention when they call off bets. And so it ends up staying on 20, $7,200. And then it hits again. Right? So $7,200 at 72 to 1. So now he's got $518,000. And so he's like, well, why not let it ride again? And sure enough, it comes up 3. And he loses it. Right? So he goes back upstairs, and his fiance, or his wife, right, asks him, oh, where'd you go? He's like, I just went downstairs and gambled a little bit. She said, really, how'd you do? He's like, I only lost $100. No, you lost $518,000. But the problem is he doesn't see it as his money. He sees it as one money, like it's the casino's money. Similar thing happens when you get a raise. You see it as a bonus. You don't necessarily see it as, this is my money.
Right.
And so you start to like, oh, well, it's house money. It's my boss's money. I'll spend it, right? As opposed to seeing it as, no, this is your money going forward. And so people tend to kind of blow it, not thinking about it as theirs.
Right. So honestly, though, there are ways to combat that. As soon as you find out you're going to get a raise and you find out what percentage it is, you can immediately allot that percentage in a number of different directions. Historically, what I and a number of my clients have done is, as soon as they find out what that percentage raises, maybe it's a 3% raise, they'll hop on their retirement plan, their 401k, and immediately adjust it up.
Right.
3%, maybe 2%. Sometimes I put it the entire amount to my retirement because I'm already used to living on the dollar amount that's going into my check.
Right. Right.
Therefore, wait, did I freeze?
Yeah, you froze for a second. Okay.
You froze on me. Did I freeze on you?
Yeah, a little bit. You're good now.
Okay, so essentially, 1, 2, or 3%. Sometimes I split the difference and I say half of that's going to go into retirement and half of that I'm going to let myself enjoy a little bit more of my money, and I let it go into my paycheck. But making that as a deliberate choice, the second you know how much your raise is going to be, is a really good way not to have all of it just slide out of your fingers.
Right. Well, and 3% is, let's say I'm making 50,000, 3% is only 1,500. So it's not a huge amount of money. A lot of where this really gets people is you finally get that job or that position that now pays you $10,000 a year more. Right. And because it's so much, it doesn't really occur to you. You think, oh, well, there's plenty. It's $10,000 extra dollars, right? As opposed to thinking about it, no, that's all your money in the pot now. It's not extra money.
Right.
It's still part of the pot. The pot just got a little bigger. Right. And like Lacey said, the smart thing to do is go, okay, of that 10,000, okay, maybe I take half of it and spend it, but I take the other half and save it. Or I take a portion of it and I, if you're somebody like who wants to, like, if you want to pay off your car, pay off a credit card, maybe you say, I'm going to take, an extra, whatever it is, $500 a month and just get rid of that thing.
Right, and set it up to be on autopilot. Mm-hmm. Don't put yourself in the position where you are having to manually decide that the extra, as you're thinking about it, money,
right,
should go elsewhere versus for whatever you want it to. Set it on autopilot. Set that extra dollar amount to go to whatever the place is until you get used to it, right, and stop perceiving it as extra, because it's only temporarily extra because you weren't used to it. It's becoming your new paycheck. That's what it is.
And that's the catch right there, is that first, whatever, 6 months to a year, it's extra money in your mind. But then you get used to that lifestyle. Now that's what lifestyle creep is. Now I'm used to spending this extra money every month. So now it's more difficult for me to cut back. Because
right,
now I've gotten into the habit of having all this extra cash. And that becomes a real tricky thing, especially when you get near retirement, because what ends up happening in retirement, almost inevitably for most people, is you end up having to cut back your lifestyle because you're living on a more fixed income, because you're getting Social Security, whatever's in your savings, and maybe you're lucky enough to have a pension. But you're typically not making the same amount you were when you were working. It's usually significantly less. And then that's a big strain to go into. So it's better to prep for that now and get used to budgeting now so you can stay within your means. Because if you can stay within your means, a lot of your finance problems are going to just magically go away.
Right.
Because you'll have money at the end of the month. It's a big trick that I think, I know it sounds stupid when you say it. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I get it. But it's something you have to practice.
You have to practice actually executing on it. It's very easy to say this is a logical thing to do. Where the practice comes in is in the literal behavior parts.
Right. But you just got to get used to it. Nope. Okay, so I got a $10,000 raise. No, I got a $5,000 raise, and I got a $5,000 increase to my 401k.
Right.
Right. Just get used to. I mean, that's how I like to break that kind of stuff up. It's just, okay, it's X amount. Actually, it's not. It's this amount that's, my bonus for me. And then the rest is for old Duncan. Right.
Right. You might say, using my 3%. In teacher land, we get a lot of 3% raises, but we get them more frequently and like literally on a schedule. So I go,
like COLAs kind of thing.
All right, Lacey gets 1% more just to play with, and Lacey's something she's paying down gets 1% more, and Lacey's retirement gets 1% more, or whatnot. I will allot those percentages, and oftentimes I will give myself a little bit more and let myself just enjoy a little bit more, but I won't allow that to happen to all of it. Otherwise, I won't meet my other goals.
Right.
And you have to keep your eye on the prize for meeting your other goals too. You probably set them because it's something you actually want, to retire by a certain age, or go on, certain vacations, or have a house, paid off by a certain point in time, etc.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in the short term because it's immediate. It's what's going on now, right? As opposed to thinking, what are my midterm goals? What are my goals in the next 5 years? Right. And then what are my long-term goals? What's past that? 10, 15, 20 years, whatever that is. Because like you said, if you get a bonus like that or an extra raise or something, that's money you can put forward to yourself later on. Right? I'm not saying put all of it. Take some, spoil yourself now. But think of the 3 buckets: my short term, my medium, and my long term. Let's put a little bit in each one. instead of putting it all in the short term and just going out and blowing it.
Right.
So we can watch another couple minutes of this, but yeah, that's pretty much the whole gist of it at the end of the day. I mean, they did a whole 10-minute segment on it, but I don't know that we need to go that long.
Wrong with wanting nice things. The mental, emotional reason why we want to acquire more is generally rooted in this need for like your perceived value. Like we live in a world where like the nicer car you drive, the higher your perceived value is. 6 out of every 10 people surveyed said that paying for everyday expenses negatively impacted their mental health.
It does take a lot of joy from just life and always being in this scarcity mindset when there isn't necessarily scarcity to fear.
Here's why Americans feel like they're constantly struggling to keep their paycheck, even when they start making more money.
Yeah, I think she got a good point there with you put yourself in that sort of scarcity position because you're living outside your means. Now, in an ideal world, that wouldn't be an issue, right? In an ideal world, it'd be like, Norway or something where our education and our healthcare and basic needs were all pretty much met. We wouldn't have to worry about it so much, but we don't live in that country, unfortunately. So you gotta plan ahead, especially for that kind of stuff, because you never know. And those everyday, medical costs in this country are ridiculous. But heaven forbid, it's the way I always think about it. Like sometimes I'll explain it to clients like this, where it's like, maybe you have that kind of job where you could get injured, right? Where you could get sick and you wouldn't be able to work for a while. Well, how are you going to pay for that? So maybe we should think about saving some extra money for that, or maybe purchasing some disability plan or something like that. With health insurance, it's the same thing. You never know when you're going to get sick. And everybody likes to think, oh yeah, I'm immortal, I'm immune, and when you're young, but we can tell you as you get older, it's eventually going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We're not gods. We're mortal. Things are going to go wrong.
Sadly, it would be really convenient if we were.
Right. And I always like to think of like this sort of risk management stuff, because she's talking about that scarcity mindset where it's like, yeah, that is stressful if I'm paying out all my expenses, but I don't have anything left over. And then you have to worry about, well, what if something happens? My car breaks down, or, I got to pay for this thing, right? Or I got sick, or I got injured and I couldn't work, and now I'm having to take out debt or whatever. I like to think of it like this. You got to think of your savings and your budget. There's at certain point, like the savings, and maybe you have to have an insurance portion or whatever it is. Depends on who you are, right? But I always like to think nobody wants that. Nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody likes to think about those bad things. But I always try to tell people it's a lot like a condom. I would rather have one and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right. Because you never know when something's going to come up. You never know.
That feels like the note to end on.
Yeah, I think that is
the note to end on.
But anyway, so yeah, just be smart with your money, everybody. Thanks everybody for watching. Where can everybody catch you, Lace?
As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com. You can find information about courses, workshops I do, articles I've written. If you want to write in about any of those things, or you want to send us some clips. I love it when you guys send us stuff. You send us the best stuff. Every once in a while, we even agree with people when you send them to us, which is always fun. I know it's happened once or twice.
It does.
So if you want to send us something or information about any of our work, feel free to email us. Duncan, where would that be?
Yeah, you can email us at gossipfinance80@outlook.com. Feel free. Videos, if you guys want to come on the show and discuss something with us. If you have financial questions, I mean, we can't give you advice online because that would be irresponsible. And I'm a fiduciary, so I can't do that. But we could at least point you in the right direction. So feel free to email us. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time. All right.